Hello, 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 beloveds. Welcome back to our peaceful channel. It is me, Shini Yvonne, and I am so glad to be speaking to you today, coming to you with another diary entry. So I have been not keeping something from you, but in diary entries past and in some of the vlogs, I have not shared a particular aspect of myself or what I was praying about or discussing with the Father for very good reason, because I wanted to keep it to myself. And there's other things that I have not shared with you guys yet that I will, because I am transparent. I'm very, very transparent, and I will share more with you that I have not shared as the time goes on. As I get more clarity about how to share what I'm thinking, what I'm talking about, what I'm praying about, as I get more clarity on doing that, I will share with you. So without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get into the diary entry. Do you remember the word for 2025? I shared my word with you as we were talking about, as I was sharing with you the vision board and the plans and things that I had for 2025. Do you remember what I said the word was? Probably not. But the word for 2025 was remember. Right? It was remember. And I didn't explain to you what remember means, what remember meant to me at that time, but I'm going to share it with you right now. I wanted to remember what the promise was. God gave all of us a promise. He gave all of us a purpose. When I first started this channel, and remember, I was going through that really, really difficult time. And then the Lord gave me my new identity, right? And so as I was walking forward and moving forward in that, I knew, or I had there was a revelation that there was a promise. And in my mind, I had identified what I thought, not what I thought the promise was, but when I thought the promise came to me. And it still could have been that time, but I have yet to receive confirmation from it. At the time that I decided remember was going to be the word of 2025, I was thinking that the promise he gave it to me when I was a child. And I'm not going to go into depth about why I think that was. I will share that with you later. But I was thinking that the promise came to me at that point, which, like I said, it could have, but I have not been able to remember. Right? So all of this year, I've been praying and diligently seeking for God to show me what was the promise, because I have no idea what the promise is. Right? And where I started getting fixated on the promise was I had been studying Abraham in the Bible, Abraham, the father of faith. And in studying Abraham and any other heroes and prophets in the Bible, the Lord gave each one of them a promise, a purpose in life. Like he's given each and every one of us a purpose in life of what we should be doing. So he gives us the purpose, then he gives us a promise of how we're going to get that done. You remember last year when I first started this channel, he gave me the new identity, just like he had given Abraham the new identity. Abraham he was born with Abram, right? That was his name, Abram. But then when God had called him and he started following Christ, he started following God, right? Listening and obeying and having faith, trusting in what God has promised him, which was he was going to be the father of many nations. Even though him and Sarah, his wife, they were stricken in age, they were old, they were really, really old, but the promise God said was, you're going to have kids by each other. Right? And we do know that did happen. If you don't believe me, go back and read Genesis. when God changed Abram's name from Abram to Abraham, he was giving him the identity that he needed to walk into his purpose, being the father of many nations, being the father of faith, being the symbol of what faith looks like, how you're supposed to act when you are believing and when you are trusting God for something, right? Last year, I received the new identity, Shini Yvonne, the peacemaker, a peacemaker, right? That was the new identity, to walk into the new purpose that God has put onto my life. May not be the new purpose, but a purpose that God has put onto my life. I knew the identity. The assignment was to create and grow a ministry. The ministry is practicing peacemaking, to teach biblical principles on how to resolve conflict, particularly inner conflict, which I have dubbed emotional intelligence, right? That is the assignment. Now, what I had been missing was the promise. I didn't know what the promise was. I know why I'm doing it, to bring other disciples into the fold, into the kingdom. That is the purpose for doing what I'm doing, right? I get it. I get that much. But that I knew there had to be a promise, right? I knew there had to be a promise connected to that, because our example was Abraham. That was my example, was Abraham. And with Abraham, with the new identity, with the purpose, he had a promise. So I was looking for my promise. I had been looking for my promise. And beloved, I found that promise this week. I read it. And to show you that I am a practicer of everything that I teach, this is a journal that I had back in 2011. 2011. This is the journal. I've been journaling for years, and I teach journaling because it's so important. And this video is going to explain to you why this is so important. Right? Self-assessment, journaling. Taking it down, writing it down when you need to. Because the promise was given to me in 2011. I did not remember until this week. And it is getting, this is so old, it's crumbling. You can see the writing from 2011. The promise was given to me specifically September the 8th of 2011. I was using this journal when I was in North Carolina in 2011. And I was going to an evangelist church. That's the church that I was attending. I wasn't necessarily a member of the church, but I was attending that church for my worship. And so when I started going to this church, they had different Bible studies, group studies, classes, and all this stuff that you could that people who come to the church can attend to grow more in the faith or grow to become members. And so I started participating. Even though I wasn't a member of that church, I started participating as though I was. So during one of these study halls that I had attended, there was a lady there that I guess was teaching the class. Don't hold me on this because I'm not really sure if this was the actual setting, because I don't remember this part. I don't even remember writing this down. I have no memory of this particular day. I have no memory of September the 8th of 2011. No memory to recall. None whatsoever. But what I do know is I remember parts of the writings in this book confirmed that this was the church that I was going to. Right? I knew as I was reading it, I knew that some of the lessons that I had written down, I got from that church because I would never forget it. So I knew that this was the journal that I was using at the time. And I knew I only used this journal in 3 ways. Every time I went to a service or a study hall or some type of participation with the church, I had this with me. When I was studying notes from what I took at those study sessions, those sermon sessions, and including Sunday mornings, anything that I jotted down then and I went back to study on my own, I wrote it in this book. The other setting was when I was just couldn't sleep or dealing with something, I needed to talk to myself or I needed to talk to God. I wrote it in this book. Those are the 3 ways that I use my journals. I knew that. I know that because I know my habits. You have to know your habits in order for you to remember. Right. Because I knew my habits, I must have been sitting in some type of study session or a service to jot this down. Because it says, message from God through Cynthia Miller. I don't remember who Cynthia Miller is. I have no recollection, no memory of a Cynthia Miller. No clue who she is. But God talked to her and she relayed the message to me. This is where the promise came in. Apparently, I wrote down, it looks like, as I'm reading this, it looks like I wrote down exactly what she told me to write down. She had to tell me to write this down because I wrote down everything that she said, which normally I don't write down everything that comes out of someone's mouth. I paraphrase, right? I summarize what you're saying in my way of understanding it. Most of us do that, right? But in this particular instance, I wrote down everything that came out of her mouth. And it's probably because she told me to. Once again, you'll be able to understand things when you know your own habits. Especially when you journal. So this is what she said. She's not going to like me after all. God is sending me to give her a direct message. She's going to counteract it with head knowledge. That part right there had to been what she told me. Right? When she came to me or when she approached me, when she spoke to me first with write this down. Write everything that I'm about to say to you down. And I started writing. I guess the ending of what was given to her, she forewarned me that something that she's gonna tell me, I'm gonna try to discount it, which I probably did because once again, to this day, I still have no idea. I cannot place a scene of when this actually happened other than the fact of what is written down here. The bit about what threw me a little bit when I read this, because I was like, I'm not sure. What threw me was she's not going to like me after all. Now, beloveds, I don't remember Cynthia Miller. I have no idea who this lady is. Do not remember this lady. So I don't know if I like her or not. I'm sure I do. Because there's not one person out here that I can say I don't like. I may not want to have much to do with you, but it's not because I don't like you. It's probably because I recognize a spirit that does not agree with my spirit, right? So I'm not sure what that really means. Like a lot of this, I am still trying to figure out. But the big portion of this, I just needed to share. So that was the first thing. That the next thing that she said. And then she said, tell her. Tell her. So this is the message that God gave her for me, right? The message that I am going to counteract with head knowledge. I am going to try to discredit it because of what I see in my reality and what I know about myself at 25 years old, right? I am not going to listen to what she has to say because my 25-year-old mind, my 25-year-old eyes could not fathom what was about to be told to me. And beloveds, she was right, because once again, I did not remember this. Nor had I been thinking about this until the end of last year when I created this channel and God started speaking to me about this then. Tell her. I've called her to a higher calling. That's why she's different. And she will find out and have a huge impact of people her own generation. It's not going to be easy, but I am with you and you won't fail. But come into exactly what I've called you to do as well. Let me rephrase it. God has called me to a higher calling. That's why I'm different. And I will find out and have a huge impact of people my own generation. I know it's not going to be easy, but God is going to be with me and I will not fail. I cannot fail. But come into exactly what he has called me to do. That was the promise. And practicing peacemaking is the impact on my own generation in such a time as this. The moral of this story is, beloved, just because you don't know the promise, if you are in a situation where you feel called to do something, but you're not sure why you're called to do it, or you're not even sure if you're called. He gave you a promise. You just need to remember it. Because if you feel led to do something, if you feel led by God, now you got to know the difference between your flesh and God. That's what practicing peacemaking is going to help you understand. It's going to help you distinguish the two, because your flesh can play tricks on you, and that's just the enemy, right? That's just the enemy. When you hear God call you to do something, he gave you a promise in the beginning. You just need to remember it. He's not going to give you an assignment without giving you a promise. He's going to give you a promise first. He's going to give you a promise first. Then he's going to give you an assignment, which is your purpose. And then he's going to give you the identity to walk in it. Right? I know I read this 50 times this week. The same page, the same paragraph. I read approximately 50 times this week. Trying to think over and over and over. Does this really say what it say? Am I really hearing what I'm hearing? Is this real? You have no idea how many times I read Message from God through Cynthia Miller, trying to figure out, is this something that God gave me that I needed to tell her? Trying to twist it around. But words don't lie. If it was something that he wanted me to tell her, I would have said Message from God to Cynthia Miller, or Message from God for Cynthia Miller, right? That's what I would have said. But I didn't. What I wrote down was Message from God through Cynthia Miller. Through. That means she spoke it. She gave it to me. As I was pondering on this promise, I did start to get a little concerned Because what I'm not telling you, beloved, is that there has been other stuff that has happened in the past couple of weeks that has further confirmed what this promise is saying. And so last night, as I was sitting there pondering on the promise, God spoke Hebrews 12:3, and that reads, "Think of all the hostility he endured from sinful people. Then I won't become weary and give up." And I had to write that underneath the promise, because when he said, "It's not going to be easy, but I am going to be with you and you won't fail. I will not fail. He will be with me as long as I remember how Jesus responded, how Jesus acted when he was fulfilling his purpose." Because Abraham may be the father of our faith. He may be the best example that we have, well, one of the best examples that we have of a person moving forward in faith, trusting by faith, right? We also have a very, very good example of walking out the purpose gracefully, beautifully, perfectly. And that's with Jesus Christ. As long as we remember his journey, what he did, what he said, how he responded, which is the foundation of the biblical principles for practicing peacemaking. The biblical principles for emotional intelligence, the way God has given it to me. If we remember Jesus' example, then we will have enough strength, enough courage, and enough grace to fulfill our purpose. Okay. So the last thing that I want to share with you is something a little bit deeper that I looked at this morning. Because as I told you, I am studying Abraham, right? And we got to the point of the lesson where I am understanding the new identity, understanding what the identity is, understanding what the identity means, right? And so as I was, reading that and understanding what Abram meant and what Abraham means and what Sarah and all of that, it led me to think, well, what does my name mean? Right? What is the identity that you gave me? What is the new identity that you gave me? What does that mean? Because I have no clue. I even asked my mom, when she named me my name, because she was the one that gave me, well, I guess God did give it to her, but she wrote it on the birth certificate, right? My name was Sheena Yvonne, right? That's my first and middle name. I asked her, what did that mean to you? She didn't know. She thought it was pretty. She thought it was pretty. I was an early baby. I came out prematurely. And so she was in the hospital and it was time for delivery, and I was ready, but I wasn't ready, right? So she was in that little hole moment, and she was watching a movie on the hospital TV, which was Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, or Sheena the Warrior, or something like that. It was a movie called Sheena. She saw the name, she watched the movie, and she was like, I love that name. That's such a pretty name. That's going to be her name. Because she didn't have a name for me then. She did not. By the time I was, I think she was 8 months, 7.5, 8 months pregnant when I was ready to come out. At that time, she didn't have a name for me. So I got my name because she thought it was pretty. That's what she thought. Right? And then the middle name came because she thought it sounded good. Sheena Yvonne. She thought it sounded good together, which it does, but it was sounded good together for a reason. She had no idea why, truthfully, why she was naming me that, but God knew. So I looked up my name and I put it in this Bible, the King James Version Bible. This is the Bible that I study from in my quiet time. And so this morning when I was studying using this Bible, I didn't have any paper. I didn't have my journal with me, but all I had was the Bible. And I was like, let me look up my own name. Let me see what my identity means. Let me see what the name God gave me. What does that mean? Here's what I found. Sheena in Hebrew. So my name, Sheena, Sheena, is a Hebrew name. And it means God is gracious or God's gift. I have a deep inner desire to inspire others in a higher cause and to share my own strongly held views on spiritual matters. That's what my name means. I had no idea until this morning. But that is me all day. So because the new identity is Sheena Yvonne together, not just my first name and then I have a middle name and then I do have a last name, but he has combined my first and my middle name together as one word, Sheena Yvonne. It's not two separate names anymore. It's just one, right? So let me look up Sheena Yvonne, the Yvonne part. And I did. That is a French name. Go figure. But it's French. And it means Yow. Y-E-W. And it means strength, resilience, and adaptability. I have a deep inner strength that allows me to overcome challenges and obstacles in life. What does your identity mean? The new identity that God is giving you, what does it mean? Comment below. Well, thank you, beloved, for entertaining me on this diary entry. I greatly appreciate you tuning in once again on this channel. Remember, we are creating a community of peacemakers. Right? We're creating a community of people who love to share good news. Not just good news, but the good news. So feel free to start engaging with one another and getting to know one another in the comments. Also allowing me to get to know you. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. If it blessed you in somehow, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who you know is struggling with their identity or struggling to remember what their promise is. Until next time, be guided by His light.